can give me.
We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest, Clint Kelly. He's a malpractice attorney here in town. It's good to have him on as always. Your office in Hendersonville.
Yes.
And keeps busy, and he takes time to come on here and take your calls and questions about malpractice cases. Let's go to Joe real quick. Joe, good morning. Hey, Joe, are you there, my friend? He's going to come back. Joe's usually good about that. Let's go to Leilani. We'll come back to Joe. He's a regular caller. Hey, Leilani.
Good morning.
Good morning. What can we do for you?
Well, I have a comment to make.
Sure.
I had busted my rotator cuff.
Yeah, your rotator cuff?
Yeah. And when I got into the emergency room, they said my shoulder. Well, yes, that was right. But I said, what about the rest of my arm? Okay, and they said, well, we can't do anything about that because they said the shoulder.
Okay, and so what happened? Where are you upset about what happened? Did they fix it?
I have a.
You're breaking up. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, come on.
I have a bump in my right arm where I have to be very careful about how I use my right arm.
Okay, so here, let me get to this, because you're kind of just being vague here. So did they do a procedure that did not work properly, or are you saying they misdiagnosed it? What's the issue here with your doctor?
They didn't misdiagnose it. It's just that they didn't pay attention to what the what the person was trying to tell them.
Okay, so did they fix your rotator cuff?
They fixed that, but they didn't do anything else on the arm. And so I just didn't like their attitude about things.
Okay, how about this? It sounds to me like she's frustrated. Her arm was messed up as a whole. The rotator cuff they fixed. If you're going to the doctor and you're telling them, listen, I know we've got the rotator, but I've got another problem here. And I don't know, I assume the doctor would look at that, but if you're not getting the results you want, I don't know that that's malpractice. It might be, hey, I need a new doctor.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think there's a difference between consumerism and being a litigant. And
Okay.
she's talking, in my opinion, about consumerism. A good medical consumer needs to get second opinions. And if they don't like the care they're getting, they need to go to another doctor or go to another health care provider to get the care that they want, as opposed to, well, I didn't like how they talked to me, how they treated me, so I'm going to sue.
Yeah.
And see, you know, Nick, that's one thing that I want to bring up now is there is a mindset in the public that people sue all the time because people don't like their doctor, they don't like how they're being talked to, they don't like how they're being treated. And that's just not true.
Because you're not going to win.
You're not going to win, and no one's going to take your case.
Right.
And so there are people who may be legitimately upset about what their doctor or health care provider did, but the remedy for that is to simply go somewhere else. Just like if you don't like how you're being treated at Discount Tire, go to Firestone. Now, I'm not saying anything's wrong with Discount Tire, but that's what you do, is you go somewhere else.
Or vice versa. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You look and shop around if you're not happy with what
Same
you've
with a
got.
lawyer. If you don't like Lawyer Brown, go to Lawyer Roberts. I mean, there is a responsibility on the part of the patient now to make sure that they get the care that they and the treatment that they believe they deserve. It's only when that care is substandard and causes severe damage when you may have a case.
Gotcha. All right, let's go back to Joe. Joe, you there, buddy?
I'm here, Nick.
Okay, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Question for Mr. Kelly. What about malpractice in nursing homes? We seem to be getting a lot of that. So what is the answer to that if you get mistreatment at a nursing home?
It is malpractice. Our legislature has decided that any claim against a nursing home will constitute what they call a health care liability action, but that's just the same thing as malpractice. What Joe's pointed out, I believe, is going to be a more consistent problem as our boomers get older and they continue to move into assisted living and some into nursing home cares. You're going to see the population swell. and there's only so many resources to take care of these people. And unfortunately, what happens, and we've seen it many times in nursing homes, is people either get ignored, they get mistreated. In some cases, people die because they get the wrong medication. It's a for-profit business, and that's what's going to happen.
Now that seems like, if they're given a wrong treatment, a clear case of malpractice. Now, would you take on a case perhaps where someone suffers, say, bed sores from neglect because no one's turned them in 3 days?
Yes.
And that would be, that's kind of, is that a passive form of malpractice? I mean, when I think of malpractice, I think of, the ultimate form is a surgeon doing the job and he leaves the forceps in your abdomen when he stitches you up. Something like that. That's blatant, all right? But if a doctor is supposed to be caring for you, or the nurses in a nursing home, and you're not turned for 3 or 4 days, and that person suffers bed sores, they get infected and cause problems, that's medical malpractice? Yeah,
you're thinking of what we call sins of commission, where something is done to you.
Yeah.
Whereas like the failure to treat a bed sore, allowing a bed sore to become an infection where the patient becomes septic and dies or loses a limb, that's a sin of omission, and it can be worse than a sin of commission. So the bottom line is, if nursing homes are subject to the same medical malpractice cause of action as a doctor or a hospital, and I'm afraid we're going to see more and more nursing home claims.
Are you seeing some, or have you had folks approach you? Have you taken any of those cases yourself yet, or what's happening with you?
Yes, we have in the past, and we still take some of them because, I mean, when it happens, it's usually really bad.
Yeah, if you're taking it, it usually
Everybody has a grandmother, Nick.
Yeah, and then there's some very sad stories out of there. Let's go to, hey, Renata, good morning.
Yes, good morning. How you doing?
Good. What can we do for you?
Yes, I had a question about infant death. I had a son to die in 2005. I revived him at the home. The ambulance came and got him. And when he got to the hospital, they said they lost him. But in his medical records, it said he was still breathing and groping. So I was just wondering, was there a possibility my son was still alive? And it said they just stuffed him in a Ziploc bag.
Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss there. Again, she's fair to ask this. Of course, this is 2005, so statute of limitations is out. But yeah, SIDS, infant death, that's tough, isn't it?
It is tough. Now,
gosh, that's a sad story.
When you're talking about infant death, you're talking about it's a case that has to be investigated no matter what. Because in my mind, children are the ones that are the most vulnerable, as well as elderly people in nursing homes. And that's a case that should be investigated. The unfortunate part is, as you know, Nick, it's been 10 years, and so there's no claim there. Was there any criminal wrongdoing? Hard to tell, but even then, the time's gone by.
Do you know, was there an autopsy done on your child?
Yes, there was 3 autopsies done on my child. 1 because of past medical reasons. 2 because of, to be honest, I had domestic violence problems. And 3 because he was born early.
And what did they determine the cause of death was?
Undetermined.
Okay.
Wow.
So, okay, undetermined. Wow, that's tough.
That's probably why they did 3 of them.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Well,
sometimes babies do die for no apparent reason.
They do, and that was investigated. I'm pleased to hear it. I know people don't like to think, gee, you have to have autopsies to have proper investigations, but you do sometimes, particularly on cause of death, and particularly as it is of a child. So it sounds like that was investigated, and unfortunately they couldn't figure out what the cause of death was. In some cases, like you said, Nick, it's just natural causes. They can't figure it out.
Yeah, undetermined or something like this. Again, I'm so sorry for your loss all this time later, but yeah, if anyone was in that situation like hers, then God forbid, and it's just a horrible thing she went through, but immediately at that point, you are in a position to demand or ask for an autopsy if you don't have
the
answers?
You can, first of all, you can ask for an autopsy publicly. Most of the times they will give you one, particularly if it's a child, and particularly if the child has died under suspicious circumstances, or for that matter, anyone.
Is that something the medical examiner would do here for the county that you happen to live in, and is that something you would have to pay for, or does it depend?
It's the former, if you ask and they give it to you. If they deny you the opportunity or say, we're not going to do an autopsy, then you can hire a private pathologist to perform a private autopsy. I'll say this to everybody who's watching this show. If there is a child who dies, I don't care, unless you know for a fact what the cause of death is, and it's natural causes, or unless it has something to do in the criminal realm, and you have the slightest whiff that there's potentially medical negligence, you call a lawyer. Don't think twice about it, because children deserve that extra special care and investigation, because bad things happen in those situations. for whatever reason, when it happens to a child, sometimes it just gets swept under the rug.
Well, true too, unless, like you said, it's a clear medical condition. I mean, it's like children shouldn't die, right?
They shouldn't.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah, I know it happens and it's very tragic when it occurs, but I mean, it's more unusual if you have a child that goes in for a situation sometimes and you think it's going to be just routine and then they die.
You know, Nick, when they
that's going to get your attention. I guess that would get your attention whether it's a child or not, of course.
Would. You mentioned SIDS, and that's a real good point. I think when you get beyond age 1 and the child has sort of survived the early killers and starts moving into, you know, what I call the pediatric realm, where it's just sort of they're just growing and they should thrive and they're not. Yes, they should live, and if they're not, then to me there's something wrong, unless clearly there's a cause of death that can be, you know, fingered pretty well, and you can understand that it was a natural cause or maybe an auto wreck or something like that.
Get on it right away.
Yes.
And I think Renata did 3 autopsies. Unfortunately, they weren't able to determine a cause, and that's so difficult. Listen, we need to take a break on that note. When we come back, more of your phone calls. If you want to join in the conversation, questions about medical malpractice, situation you may be in, or just in general about the law, the number 737-7587. We'll be back with Clint Kelly right after this.